Republican Dave McCormick. Thank you so much for being with us here today.
Hey, great to be here, James. Thanks.
So you are a familiar face to people here in Pennsylvania. You ran before in 2022 in the Republican primary for Senate. Then you lost out to Mehmet Oz by less than 1,000 votes. So why did you decide to do this again?
Well, it's the same motivation that I had for running the first time, which is I'm a Pennsylvania kid. I've born and raised here, and I've really lived the American dream. I've had everything Pennsylvania and this great country has to offer, and I think the country's headed in the wrong direction. I think it's being challenged economically, militarily, spiritually, and I think we need new leadership. And so I'm running to try to make a difference. And Bob Casey's been in office in the Senate 17 years, in public office almost 30, and in the most consequential state in the country, he's been a very unconsequential senator, and has really been a rubber stamp that has voted in line with President Biden's failed policies on many issues. So I think there's an opportunity to make a case to the people of Pennsylvania that we need new leadership, somebody who's going to shake things up a bit, someone who's going to come to Washington as an outsider. And so that's why I'm running.
Losing that vote by less than 1,000 votes, I know that had to be disappointing for you. What made you decide to jump back into this, and what's going to be different this time around?
Yeah, well, when you lose by less than 1,000 votes, you can drive yourself crazy thinking about all the things that you might have done differently. And I certainly have learned the lessons. But my life has been a lot about failing and then learning from the failure and succeeding. So whether it's walking off the mat after losing a big wrestling match, or getting fired from a job, or losing the last election, these kinds of experiences test you. They test your resilience. You learn from them, and you become better. And so I'm hoping, and I think I'll be a much better candidate this time around. And the motivation to serve is what drives me. I don't need this job. I want the job. And the reason I want it is because I think I can make a difference, and I think it'd be a great honor to serve the people of this great Commonwealth.
Speaking of that job that you're running for, you did this before, but this is a lot different circumstances. In that time when you ran before, you were in a crowded field of Republicans. Right now, you're pretty much the only one. And I know you have a long list of Republican endorsements. Do you think that matters, and do you think that's going to help you carry it, taking on Bob Casey?
Well, I certainly think it matters to be able to unite the party, and I hope that will happen. It seems to be happening. To be able to unite the party, come together, and run a really great race against Bob Casey is going to be key to success. And I think what happened is, Pennsylvania Republicans have realized that the most important thing, whatever differences we have among us, they're small in comparison to the differences that we have with the Democratic Party, in particular with Bob Casey and the progressive set of policies he's promoted. So by being able to bring the party together, and then to be able to run a strong campaign focused on the issues, focused on leadership, focused on, listen, I'm sure Bob Casey's a nice guy. I'm not running against that. I'm running against the fact that he hasn't made a difference for Pennsylvanians, and that we need leadership to make a difference, and that he's been lockstep with Joe Biden. And I think most Pennsylvanians would agree that many of Joe Biden's decisions and policies have failed them. And that's the case I want to make.
One big endorsement you didn't get last time around was Donald Trump. Right. Are you looking for that this time?
Well, President Trump and I have had our differences. That's been very public. The most notable one is that he didn't support me. He supported somebody else. But I also thought that many of President Trump's policies were very, good policies, and took our country in the right direction, particularly in contrast with the failed policies of Joe Biden. So I'm going to run my race. I'm going to run a race to be the senator from Pennsylvania. I'm going to mostly focus on that.
He's in a situation the way that you were, where he is now part of a crowded field. Does that endorsement go the other way? Do you support him, or is there a presidential candidate that you do support?
Well, I'm going to focus on my race, and when there's a nominee, I'll support and endorse the nominee, but I'm not going to get involved in presidential politics until then.
All right. I have more questions for you. Please
Great.
Don't go away.
I'm not
We're
going
to have more on
Thank
that
you.
when we come right back. Stay with us.
Thanks.
Welcome back. I'm talking with Senate candidate Dave McCormick, and I want to talk about the issue of abortion. That's going to be a big hot-button issue headed into the next election. Pennsylvania Democrats say that you are against exceptions for abortion in cases of rape or incest. Now, back in our Senate GOP primary debate, we asked you about this, and you said, quote, "I believe in the very rare instance there should be exceptions for life of the mother." So let's just clear this up now.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on this?
Well, my position throughout last campaign and this one, multiple places where it was said and recorded, was I'm pro-life with exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. But this is an issue where I think we really do need to find empathy and compassion and find common ground. And there's a lot of common ground to be found. If you look across what Pennsylvanians think, whether it's a wide accessibility for contraception, whether it's additional support for adoption services, or whether it's the restrictions on late-term abortions, where it's a large majority of voters in Pennsylvania are. And so that's what I would support, finding common ground along those lines. And this is where I honestly believe the Democratic Party is out of step. And the position of abortions up until the due date, the one that Bob Casey supports and the Democratic Party supports, is really out of step. That's the extreme position. And so that's the position I'll take during the campaign, and it's consistent with what I said during the last campaign.
And Democrats, they'll push back saying that the topic of abortion is a losing issue for Republicans. You disagree?
Well, I think it's an issue that voters care about. So if you're running for office, you have to be able to stand up and say what you think. And so I'll do that throughout. There's a number of issues that are critical to Pennsylvanians. This isn't the only one, but I'll certainly talk about it throughout the campaign.
Let's talk about the topic of residency. Critics of you say you don't live in Pennsylvania, spending most of your time in Connecticut. What do you say to that? How many days in the past year have you lived here in Pennsylvania?
Well, listen, I'm born in Pennsylvania, raised in Pennsylvania, went away from Pennsylvania to serve my country, went to West Point in the military, came back to Pennsylvania, created jobs in Pittsburgh, and then, like many Pennsylvanians, I had a great opportunity when I was working in the government to move and run a company that was outside of our great Commonwealth, but Pennsylvania's been my home. And last campaign, I spent all the majority of my time in Pennsylvania, and I am now. I live in Pennsylvania.
Where do you live?
I do. I said I live in Pennsylvania. I live in Pittsburgh. I have a home in Pittsburgh. I have a family farm that is where in the town I grew up in. I didn't grow up on the farm, but I have it. And listen, I'm like many Pennsylvanians. I'm divorced, and I have my youngest child who's finishing high school. She lives with her mom in Connecticut, so I'm going to go to Connecticut to see my daughter and be a good dad. And if there's a political cost associated with that, so be it. The most important thing for you to know is this is a distraction. This is a distraction because Bob Casey and the Democrats don't want to talk about the fact that he's voted 98% of the time with Joe Biden. They don't want to talk about the lack of a consequential record as a U.S. Senator. So he's from Rubber Stamp, Pennsylvania, and I'm from Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, and that's the way I'll talk about it during the campaign.
Okay, you brought up something there. You talked about farms. Agriculture is huge in Pennsylvania, and a big concern for many farmers is not enough young people getting into it. What would you say to the older farmers who are now having to sell their farms because of that? And what type of priority would agriculture be for you as a senator?
You know, I was just in Lancaster earlier this week. I had a roundtable with 20 farmers who were in different poultry and a variety of different industries. And there's a number of things that are creating big challenges for them. And they've really happened under the Biden administration. There's two that I'll highlight. The first is inflation. Inflation, the price of fuel, it's really been a huge, huge drag on those farmers, those small businesses. The tax code is something they're very concerned about because being able to pass on those family farms depends on maintaining some of the tax plans that President Trump put in place that are potentially at risk under a second Biden administration. And the third thing, as you said, is labor and legal labor that can support their efforts. And a big part of having these family farms being passed on to the next generation is making sure they're economically feasible. And they're not economically feasible unless we get inflation under control and have the right tax structure to support small businesses.
Very good. All right, Dave McCormick, thank you so much for being here and taking some time away from the Bloomsburg Fair to come and talk with me today. I really appreciate it. Please come back.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll be right back.